Every Christmas my wife disappeared for 2 hours. At first, it seemed normal. Our children had grown, the house was quiet, and the holidays had become subdued over the years. She would excuse herself during Christmas Eve, sometimes after dinner, sometimes during the opening of gifts, and disappear for exactly 2 hours. I assumed she was decorating, wrapping last-minute presents, or tending to some family tradition I had long stopped noticing. There was no reason to question it. 2 hours felt harmless, like a small ritual we both tolerated in our own ways, but as the years passed, the pattern gnawed at me. Every year, like clockwork, she would vanish precisely at 7 o'clock. The door behind her would click softly, then silence would settle over the house. I noticed subtle signs, her cheeks slightly flushed, the faint scent of perfume, the way her hands trembled just slightly as she returned. I told myself I was overthinking, imagining things, letting my mind create problems where none existed. Over time, though, the unease became impossible to ignore. 10 years of this strange ritual, and my curiosity had grown into obsession. What could require her to be so secretive every single Christmas? Why this precision? Why the same duration year after year? My heart would race every time she left the room. I began to feel as though I were living with a stranger. Someone who shared my life but hid a private world I was forbidden to enter. One particularly quiet Christmas Eve. The weight of 10 years of secrecy became unbearable. I had finished my tea and was sitting in the living room, the muted glow of the Christmas tree lights reflecting off the ornaments, when she quietly slipped away. My pulse quickened, and for the first time in a decade, I decided to follow her. I moved cautiously, careful not to make a sound on the old wooden floors. The house felt different at night, darker, heavier, as if the shadows themselves were watching. The faint hum of the heater and the soft crackle of the fireplace in the living room seemed amplified, each noise making my chest tighten. My steps were deliberate, almost silent, and I felt a mixture of fear and anticipation. The garage was the first place I checked. Empty. Locked. I moved toward the basement, my hands trembling slightly as I approached the door. The key was in her usual place, and I hesitated for just a moment before turning it. The lock clicked open, and a faint glow spilled out from the stairs. My heart pounded. 10 years of wondering, of curiosity suppressed by habit and trust, boiled into a single moment of revelation. I descended slowly, each step deliberate. The basement smelled faintly of dust and old wood, yet there was something else, something unfamiliar lingering in the air, a metallic tang that made my stomach turn. Shadows danced across the walls as the single overhead bulb flickered, and I could hear her moving somewhere below. My pulse accelerated. I was witnessing something I wasn't meant to see. Then I saw it, the faint outline of a figure crouched near the back of the basement, a light glinting off a metal object in their hands. My breath caught. I froze, unwilling to move, unable to call out. For 10 years, I had ignored the feeling that something was wrong, pushing it aside for comfort and routine. But now, the truth was undeniable. The 2-hour ritual was not harmless. The secret she had kept for a decade was about to reveal itself, and the sight before me made my chest tighten so sharply, I felt as though I might collapse. Time seemed to slow. I didn't dare move. I didn't dare breathe too loudly. The Christmas tree lights upstairs flickered faintly through the basement window, illuminating the figure in a soft, almost surreal glow. My mind raced, trying to process what I was seeing. Shock and disbelief coursed through me. 10 years of hidden nights, 10 years of wonder, suspicion, and unanswered questions, all culminating in this single, horrifying moment. I gripped the railing of the basement stairs, every muscle tense, every nerve on edge. My wife's secret world had been carefully hidden from me, year after year, and now I was seeing the first piece of it. The knowledge was almost too much to bear. My heart pounded, my hands shook, and for a moment, I felt paralyzed not with fear, but with the sheer weight of the truth I had been blind to for a decade. And in that quiet, dimly lit basement, I realized that my life had been divided into two: the life I thought I knew, and the one my wife had been leading behind the locked door. The 2 hours each Christmas had held a secret so immense, so unimaginable, that even now, standing at the threshold, I could barely comprehend it. I waited until the house was completely silent before moving. Every sound seemed amplified: the ticking of the clock, the faint hum of the heater, even the soft flutter of the Christmas tree lights reflected in the living room window. My mind raced with questions, each one heavier than the last. For 10 years, I had trusted her, accepted her rituals without question, and now every step I took toward the basement felt like stepping into a world I had no idea existed. The basement door loomed before me. I could feel its weight in my chest, the years of secrecy pressing against my ribs. My hand hovered over the doorknob, hesitating only for a heartbeat before I finally turned it. The lock clicked softly, and the door creaked open, revealing shadows that stretched and writhed across the walls. The air was cooler here, mustier than I remembered, carrying a faint scent that I couldn't place. My pulse raced, yet a strange calm settled over me. The curiosity that had been simmering for a decade had now become an unstoppable force. I descended the stairs slowly, gripping the railing. Every step creaked, and I paused when I thought I heard movement below. The faint glow of a single lamp illuminated part of the basement, casting long, distorted shadows. My eyes scanned the room: boxes stacked against the walls, old furniture pushed to the corners. But also something I hadn't expected: a series of folders neatly arranged on a table. Vials lined up in precise rows, and a small notebook open mid-page. The meticulousness of it all made my stomach churn. I approached the table cautiously. The folders were labeled with dates, notes, and what appeared to be observations about me, my sleeping habits, my routines, even the small details I never realized she had noticed. My breath caught. The vials were labeled too. Some contained pills, others liquid. My heart pounded as I realized what I had suspected all along: the sleeping pills I had been taking for years were not just for rest. They had been monitored, measured, controlled. She had been orchestrating every moment of my sleep, every Sunday night, every Christmas Eve. Without my knowledge, my mind reeled. 10 years of unconscious nights, every moment manipulated. The betrayal was crushing, but amid the shock, a new clarity began to form. I could see the pattern she had followed, the predictability of her movements, the precision with which she had conducted this secret ritual. It wasn't random. It wasn't accidental. It was methodical, deliberate, almost surgical in its execution. And then I heard her voice, a soft, almost casual tone behind me. "I didn't think you'd be down here," she said. I froze, every nerve on edge, turning slowly. There she was, standing in the corner, calm, composed, with a faint smile that didn't reach her eyes. She seemed unafraid, confident that I was still the obedient, unsuspecting husband I had been for a decade. But this time, she had miscalculated. I was awake now, fully aware. I didn't speak immediately. I watched her, letting the silence stretch, feeling the tension thicken in the air. The basement that had once been her sanctuary of secrets was now a stage for the reckoning I had been planning, albeit subconsciously, for years. Every file, every note, every vial in the room was now a testament to her control, and a weapon I could use. Finally, I broke the silence. "Why?" I asked, my voice calm but firm. "Why all this? For 10 years, why keep me in the dark?" She tilted her head slightly, as if the question were amusing, almost expected. "For your own good," she said softly. But the words rang hollow. Love that isolates, care that manipulates, control disguised as protection, they were no longer acceptable excuses. 10 years of sleep, obedience, and trust had been stolen from me. And the quiet calm in her tone could not undo that. I moved slowly around the basement, examining the files, memorizing the labels, photographing notes mentally. By the time she left, I had a plan forming in my mind. I would not confront her recklessly. I would not expose her immediately. I had learned patience, observation, and meticulous calculation from her methods. I would take control in a way she could not anticipate, reclaiming my life piece by piece. Silently and deliberately, the house above seemed quieter now. Smaller somehow, filled with shadows of a decade-long deception. As I climbed the stairs and closed the basement door behind me, I felt the first surge of empowerment I had experienced in years. 10 years of manipulation had ended in revelation, and I was ready to reclaim what had been stolen. The game had changed, and for the first time in a decade, I was awake. The days after that night were a careful balancing act. I moved through the house above the basement with the same quiet, composed demeanor I had always maintained, pretending as if nothing had changed. My wife continued her usual routine, disappearing for 2 hours each evening without question, unaware that I now knew everything. But beneath the calm exterior, a storm was brewing inside me. Every movement she made, every ritual she followed, I observed with precision, memorizing patterns, anticipating her actions. I began to meticulously document everything I had discovered in the basement. Every folder, every note, every observation she had recorded about me over the years was cataloged and analyzed. I created a detailed timeline of her actions, her habits, and her manipulations. For 10 years, I had been kept in the dark, my sleep and routines monitored and orchestrated without my knowledge. Now, armed with evidence and clarity, I started to understand the full scope of her control. It was methodical, precise, and terrifying in its completeness. At night I stayed awake deliberately. The absence of the sleeping pills left my body restless, but my mind was sharper than it had been in years. I watched the house like a hawk, listening for every sound, every creak in the floors, every whispered movement. Even the faint flicker of Christmas lights on the mantel became a signal. I noted how she moved when she believed she was unobserved, how she handled the vials and the files, how she positioned the folders on the workbench. Every gesture, every habit became data I could use. I began testing her reactions subtly. I moved objects slightly out of place, left notes where she wouldn't expect them, and observed her responses. The first flicker of doubt appeared in her eyes when she found the folders slightly misaligned or a vial moved just a bit. She was meticulous, but even she had vulnerabilities. Her confidence was impressive, but predictability was my advantage. Each small reaction added to the bigger picture, each misstep helping me craft the final plan. I also enlisted outside help. Discreetly trusted friends, old colleagues, and professionals who could verify the evidence I had compiled. Every photograph, every document, every record was corroborated and stored safely. I wasn't preparing a confrontation. I was preparing inevitability. The day would come when the weight of her actions would be undeniable, when there could be no argument, no deflection. It would be a moment of pure clarity, and she would have no control. Weeks passed in this silent, calculated tension. The house, once a place of quiet unease, became my laboratory of observation. I traced the exact route she took to the basement, the precise moment she unlocked the door, the sequence in which she arranged the folders and vials. I mapped every action with meticulous care. The realization of how thoroughly she had orchestrated every aspect of my life hit me harder with each observation, but instead of despair, it fueled a cold, precise resolve. I replayed the past decade in my mind. Every Christmas Eve, every night of unconscious obedience, every moment of trust given blindly, they all now formed a detailed blueprint. Pain was present, yes, but it was tempered by clarity and purpose. I was no longer a passive participant. I had learned from her methods, patience, observation, calculation. I had absorbed her own tools and now wielded them with intent. Finally, the time approached. Every detail had been accounted for, every step of the plan carefully aligned. The files and evidence were ready. My mind had rehearsed every conversation, every response, every angle. The basement, once her private kingdom of control, was now the stage for the reckoning. The moment would be precise, methodical, and undeniable. An exact reflection of the decade of manipulation I had endured. As Christmas Eve arrived again, the air seemed heavier, more charged than usual. I felt a strange calm beneath the tension, a certainty that had been absent for years. My wife moved through her usual motions, completely unaware of the shift in power. The game was about to change, and I was no longer a pawn. I was awake, fully aware, and prepared. 10 years of sleep, obedience, and trust had been stolen from me. Now, every action, every revelation, every carefully planned step was mine to control. The reckoning would be slow, deliberate, and unstoppable. And when it came, the truth would not just be revealed, it would be unavoidable. Christmas Eve arrived wrapped in silence. The house looked the same as it always did, soft lights on the tree, neatly arranged gifts, familiar shadows on the walls, but everything felt different. I felt different. For the first time in 10 years, I was not waiting for the night to end. I was waiting for it to begin. My wife moved through the house with her usual calm precision, unaware that every step she took had already been anticipated. I watched her quietly, noting how confident she seemed, how certain she was that her secret world remained untouched. At exactly 7 o'clock, she stood, smoothed her clothes, and reached for the familiar set of keys. The sound of metal against metal echoed in the room, louder than it ever had before. She glanced at me briefly, the same casual look she had given me for a decade, then turned toward the basement. This time I didn't stay seated. I followed her openly. She stopped halfway down the hall, confusion flickering across her face for just a second before she masked it. "I'm coming with you," I said calmly. My voice didn't shake. That alone startled her. She hesitated, then laughed softly, dismissively, as if I were joking. But I didn't smile. I didn't look away. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating, until she realized something had changed. She unlocked the basement door with slow, deliberate movements, her confidence beginning to fracture. The basement light flickered on, revealing the same meticulous setup I had studied for weeks. The folders, the vials, the notes. Everything exactly where it had always been, except now, they were no longer hers alone. I stepped past her and walked straight to the table, opening a folder she knew by heart. Her breath caught. For the first time, I saw fear replace control. "I know," I said quietly. 2 words. That was all it took. The air shifted instantly. I laid everything out methodically. I spoke without anger, without accusation, as if reading from a report. I described the years of monitoring, the records of my sleep, the manipulation disguised as care. I explained how I had documented everything, verified it, and secured it where it could never be erased. With every sentence, her composure crumbled further. She tried to interrupt, to justify, to soften the truth with explanations, but I didn't let her. This was not a conversation. It was a reckoning. I told her what would happen next. Not as a threat, but as a certainty. The evidence would be delivered to the appropriate authorities, to medical boards, to professionals who would understand exactly what she had done. The people she had relied on to look the other way would no longer be able to. Her carefully controlled world would unravel, not in chaos, but in quiet, undeniable steps, just as she had unraveled my autonomy for a decade. She sank into a chair, stunned, silent. I watched her closely, not with satisfaction, but with clarity. This was not revenge fueled by rage. This was justice shaped by patience. I had learned restraint from years of silence. I had learned precision from years of being observed. And now I was using those lessons to reclaim my life. When I finished, I turned off the basement light and walked back upstairs. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The power she had held over me for 10 years dissolved the moment I chose to act. Upstairs, the Christmas lights glowed softly. Unchanged, indifferent to the transformation that had just taken place. I sat down in my chair and let out a slow breath I felt like I had been holding for a decade. In the days that followed, the consequences unfolded exactly as planned, quietly, methodically, without spectacle. The truth has a way of doing that when it's undeniable. I moved through my life awake now, no longer dulled, no longer controlled. Sleep returned naturally. Mornings felt lighter. The house felt different, not because it had changed, but because I had. Looking back, I understand something I didn't before. Silence can be mistaken for peace, and trust can become a cage when it is never questioned. For 10 years, I had surrendered awareness for comfort. Regaining it required courage, patience, and the willingness to face the truth no matter how painful it was. That Christmas didn't end with celebration. It ended with clarity. And clarity, I learned, is the most powerful gift a person can give themselves.